Hello, everyone. My name is Ekaterina Kardakova. I'm an opera singer, voice, and public speaking coach. And this is my podcast, The Sound of Success. Today, I have an interesting guest, Zahrah Isaacs, and we want to discover the journey of migration. I got very interested in Zahrah's story because I follow her on LinkedIn, and she always tells with motivation, with so much energy about how she's building her business in Sweden because she moved from South Africa to Sweden. And I was thinking, why not to invite Zahra to a podcast to discover and to figure out how she found her inner voice again in a new country, because I'm a migrant too. I moved to Germany 22 years ago. Okay, I was um, pretty young. Anyways, it's a little bit different than when you move to another country when you are an adult. However, I know that this journey as a migrant is not always easy. So I would like to discover more about your story, Zahra. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good too. Thank you so much for having me, Katerina. I'm really, really honored to be a guest on your show, but also honored to have you as a LinkedIn contact.
Thank you. So let's start immediately. And my first question is, this moment when you firstly picture in your head, imagine in your head how your new life in a new country would look
Mm,
like. It's always so amazing, so
yeah,
beautiful. And when you moved in,
yeah.
and you figure out that it's a little bit different than your imagination and your picture in your head. And you have firstly collect so many papers and you don't speak the language. So basically, every day you experience so much stress. You might
Mm.
even speak the language because let's say Swedes speak pretty good English. However, you don't know so many unwritten rules. And this moment really steals your confidence, right? And your inner voice might sometimes say, like, oh my God, why did I do that? Why
Yeah,
did I do it to myself? So,
yeah.
when was the moment for you when you lost your inner voice and to rediscover
Mm.
it again? So, how could you motivate yourself to put yourself together and say, no, now I want to build my new life in a new country? So, when and where this switch was?
Whew, we're starting with a deep question, but I like it. I like it. And to answer, I don't think that it was a specific moment that I felt my voice disappear or soften. And it also wasn't a dramatic thing. Sometimes people are like, that's where I lost it. But for me, I felt like it was a slow progression of where I lost a sense of self, a loss of sense of identity, and as such, a loss of my voice. And this happened by things sometimes being quiet, and I would be in a room and I would sometimes maybe have something to say and I would just not say it. And it wasn't because anyone around me had told me to be quiet, but more because I kind of started to doubt my own trust in myself and not also trust my way of saying something would land in the way that maybe was right. You know, I started to get into my head where I felt like my references were wrong, my humor maybe didn't translate. And even my accent felt like something I had to be more conscious of. Like, was I speaking too fast or was I speaking too slow? Or was I not enunciating my words enough, etc.? And all of this inner turmoil alongside a big trauma that had happened to me in Sweden was I had moved here because I had gotten married, but unfortunately that didn't work out. And so both of those big, situations of losing myself and then also having my marriage fall apart was really something that I had lost myself completely. And I remember that I was at a professional event relatively after while going through my divorce, and someone had spoken over me, and the conversation just moved on. And I was so vulnerable and so uncertain within my own voice that I was like, did I even say something? Did I even speak? Because it just felt like I was becoming so small without anyone ever asking me to. And through my own journey of healing and therapy and rebuilding my life and myself here also, I also realized that I had been trying to sand down maybe parts of me that didn't fit. South Africans and Cape Townians can be quite direct, but I was toning that down. I would not want to take up space in a conversation. And the fact that I can now see that my gift is the fact that I do take up space in a conversation, that I am sometimes quite direct with things, and that I obviously sometimes also then see things differently because I never really belonged, quote unquote, in them by default because this is such a foreign place to me at the time. And I think for me, the moment that things changed was honestly when I just stopped doing that. Because I feel and I certainly believe that the things that made me feel like an outsider were exactly the things that made me very useful and made me very me. I notice what others sometimes don't. I ask the question that nobody's asking. And that's not despite where I'm from, that's because of it. And I think me, and I don't want to speak for every migrant in the world, but I think a lot of people who move abroad are often not the same as everyone else in the room. And once you accept that, that's part of also then reclaiming your voice and, making an impact. So yeah, that's it for me.
It's wonderful. And maybe that's why you started your company, Pouring to Found, right? You are helping foreign migrant women to find a job in Sweden, and
Yeah.
all the difficulties they're going through, all the bureaucracy, not on the
Yeah.
language, etc. However,
Yeah.
how could you, or what helped you? Maybe you could give some tips to people, men and women who move to another country because, let's say, because of work or because of
Mhm.
other circumstances, to refine the voice. So, what did you say to yourself when you understood, okay, now I feel pretty tired because so many stressful things are happening
Mhm.
around me? As you said, the migration, new country, new environment, also falling apart the marriage, divorce, etc.
Yeah.
Too many very stressful things. Not
Yeah.
everyone can actually live through all these difficult situations. However,
Mhm.
you managed it. How could you, or what did you say to yourself to move forward, to keep moving,
Mhm.
to keep
Mhm.
through all these hard times of all these stressful situations, keep going. Most important thing, to keep going. What did you tell to
Mhm.
yourself? How could you motivate yourself?
To be honest, I had built a network around me. I realized that I needed help at the time because I was very isolated. And so I had set about doing that. So, first was admitting that I needed help and then asking for it. And you would be so surprised how often people actually also want to help, but you won't know that they want to help if you don't raise your hand and say, I need the help. And my journey of rebuilding myself and getting all of this back together was not only acknowledging that, but then following through with the act. So if I was saying I need a support structure, what did that support structure look like for me? Oh, to me, that looks like a group of women and friends who support each other, who understand each other, who can learn from one another, and who can also just welcome one another, regardless of whether you are winning at life or going through a very difficult time. So I literally was on Facebook and Google and Googling women support groups in Malmo, women support groups Sweden, and I found several groups. And then I had to do the uncomfortable thing that you don't want to do as an adult, but like go on friend dates. You need to go and meet these people in real life and see if they're your vibe, see if you have similar interests. And slowly through doing that, I then found and built my tribe. But besides that, also I came back to what is important to me. what do I want to build and where do I see my life going? And again, then being curious about that, listening to that voice. And if the voice was saying, I'm curious about, communities in the world and how communities function and where's a community space here in Malmö, I would then go to a community space and see where things are. And then through taking these little actions, I then found out, about applications when you can join to be part of a cultural hub, or calls for speakers, or female groups that are meeting up once a month with different topic, whatever the case may be. So I think it was that acknowledgement, that curiosity, and then having that tenacity to go out and create it, because it's one thing to really want something, but it's another thing to act upon it. And as I did these things, I slowly realized that I wasn't really as alone as I thought I was. And once I found my sense of self within that community, it was much easier for me to then feel more sane and feel like I could move forward from these things that were happening. But then also through doing that, give validation to other women who were also then looking at me and thinking, how did she do it? Well, this is how, and you can learn from me too, just as I have learned from these other women in my life and communities as well. So that's how I built things again for myself and how I found myself again.
This is very interesting because I also I work a lot with different people, and mostly people come to Europe for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so often, now Europe is a little bit different than 20 years ago when I came here. And many people ask, so we are talking about jobs and blah, 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 blah. So I always say number one, if you are in a new country, is you have to invest in your social capital. Social currency, I call it, into people and communities.
Yeah.
You also mentioned interesting thing. You said that when you move to another country, you kind of lose your identity. So everything is you, and you don't know how to basically communicate correctly in this new country, in this new environment. My question to you is how this new experience being in Sweden, now building a business in Sweden, changed your your new identity. Is it a good, a positive thing, or is it something you would change?
I mean, what a question again. I think Sweden really, and I don't even think it's only Sweden. I think whenever someone moves abroad, you really realize how small you are and how little you know. Because if you've only lived in this bubble for all your life, that's all you've been exposed to. And so your experiences and your knowledge is also then maybe limited to that space. So when I had moved to Sweden, I had realized that, oh my gosh, I know so little about what is outside of what I'm used to. And something that certainly made me question my identity was how different I was. And I mentioned this in the first question, but everyone in Sweden was tall and is tall and blonde and blue and green eyes, and I'm clearly not that. And so there was this whole identity wrestling, I would say, in my mind, not only of who I was, but also as a woman, the standards of beauty and like how things are perceived, and how something as a foundation color that's not available to me in this country can be something that causes so much more frustration and just so much of a spiral of thoughts that went together. But that same spiral of thoughts also again created a curiosity in my mind. So, for example, I had not worn my hair curly in South Africa for the longest time, because in South Africa, I come from a community where on a Saturday night or a Sunday night, you would wash your hair and blow dry your hair and flat iron your hair because you need to look really good and decent for school. And that same kind of knowledge then went with me into my career, that straight hair equals more professional, equals more accepted, etc. But then in Sweden, I saw how different my hair was, and I saw how people were responding differently to it. But that made me curious about my own heritage And then when I went through understanding what my ethnicity is, I literally even bought a DNA test and sent it away to understand where I'd come from. But that then led me to embrace parts of me that I wasn't really aware that I wasn't embracing back in South Africa. So it was a very big and raw confrontation of my identity because I was so different and because I realized how little I had known. But that same confrontation was also the catalyst, I would say, into making me more curious about my identity and then picking what really resonates with me and then moving on into the world, both those things with more meaning and with more understanding.
Interesting. So you basically always go the other way.
Exactly, apparently so. And it's helped. It's brought me so much more joy and more acceptance and more strength in saying this is who I am and take it or leave it, you know?
Beautiful. And now, at the end, can you give 3 tips to people who just moved to another country and feel a little bit lonely and experience lots of stress because of new environment? 3 tips how to grow your confidence in a new country,
Mhm.
your inner voice, your
Mhm.
build your new identity.
Got you. I would say first and foremost is take it slow and be gentle with yourself. I wish someone had given me that tip because I was just wanting to hit the ground running, and that probably wasn't as healthy for me as if I did take it slow and learn and immerse myself. And a good way of looking at it is if you were a plant that was just, sprouting for the first time, you would still need to go through your first winter, your first summer, your first spring before you really are rock solid and stable in the ground. So maybe look at yourself as the seed that's just been planted and be gentle, just as you would nurture a small little tree or a young child learning to grow and learning to walk, kind of thing. The second thing is really take care of your mindset and approach things with a curiosity. Um, it's very easy for you to get confused and frustrated and irritated with all the systems that are different, the language is different, and it's easy to say, I'm an adult, I should know these things. But when I changed that rephrasing to, of course, I don't know these things, I just got here, it was more easy for me to accept and then learn and try again. And also love that no one knew me. Yeah. And that takes me to the third tip. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. I had had so many embarrassing, I still have many embarrassing stories of how I tried to speak Swedish the first few times and making a complete fool of myself. But it's through doing that I learned to speak the language. And it's again through appreciating, no one knows me. They probably forgot that I said the wrong word or used the wrong grammatical verb or noun or whatever the case may be. And so all of those things really help me embrace things and grow confident again. So be gentle and kind with yourself. The second one was to approach things with a curiosity instead of more condescending or criticism is a better word. And then last but not least, give yourself permission to make mistakes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for your time. And of course, I will leave all your contacts in the description under this video. So for those one who would like to meet Zahrah personal or maybe have a contact, you find all the contacts in the description. And thank you very much for your thumbs up. Share this video for those one who doesn't feel comfortable in a new country yet, because I'm pretty sure that this positive approach which Zahrah has, many people can also use and apply in the daily routine in a new country. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ekaterina. I'm really grateful and I look forward to seeing more of your podcast.